Remember that one of the main functions of a political party is to get their candidate elected. The political process varies at the local, state, and national levels, and there are nuances in the process depending on what party or state you're in. In order to understand this process, let's look at the most complicated route, the presidential election. Now remember, this is the most complicated process, and at the state and local levels, the process is a little more streamlined.
I'm sure you have all heard about the Democratic or Republican National Convention, where people like Barack Obama or Mitt Romney accepted their nominations for the presidential election.
Madam Chairwoman, delegates, I accept your nomination for President of the United States.
Mr. Chairman and delegates, I accept your nomination for President of the United States.
But the race for the big seat does not begin there. Anyone who wants to run for an election at the national level begins generating support at least a whole calendar year before the first primary or caucus. They are the two most common ways in which candidates are nominated for governmental positions. States individually choose which method they prefer, primary or caucus. But the individual parties set the rules for how a primary or a caucus will work. Think of a caucus as an internal election, in which Democrats get together with other Democrats and Republicans get together with other Republicans. Each party then discusses at a very small level who they believe would best represent them. The candidate that wins at the small level moves up to the next level. Those candidates move up to the next level and then eventually to the state level. As you watch this clip, keep in mind that 15 states and territories use caucuses today. The other method is primaries. Over 40 states and territories, including New Hampshire, Virginia, and D.C., use primaries to elect delegates. Primaries are a little more intuitive because people vote on a ballot for a delegate. Now, there are two types of primaries, open primaries and closed primaries. Open primaries means an average Joe can walk into a primary, look at his ballot, and see both Democratic and Republican nominees, and vote for who he thinks is best. A closed primary means that an average Joe can only vote according to his party affiliation. So when he walks into a Democratic primary, he is only looking at Democratic candidates. If he walks into a Republican primary, he is only looking at Republican candidates. So remember, the goal of primaries and caucuses are for individual parties to weed out candidates that are going to run for office. Then, the summer before the presidential elections, the Democrats and Republicans pick their presidential nominee at their party's national conventions. In 2012, at the Democratic National Convention, Barack Obama was chosen to be the Democratic nominee. Mitt Romney was chosen as the Republican nominee at the Republican National Convention. The next step is the general election, where the people get to vote again. But this time, they vote between the parties, aka they have to determine whether they want a Democrat or they want the Republican in the seat. The result of a general election is called the popular vote. But the popular vote doesn't determine who gets to be president. That's actually the Electoral College's job. Let's watch a video on what the Electoral College is.
Election day, when Americans everywhere cast their ballot for the next president of the United States. Except, not really. Americans don't directly vote for president. So what's happening on election day then? It's a bit complicated because of something called the Electoral College. To keep things simple for now, think of the Electoral College as the collection of 538 votes that determine who the President of the United States will be. Why 538? Because that's the number of senators, 100, plus the number of representatives, 438 in Congress. Why are there 438 representatives in Congress? Stop asking so many questions right now, we're trying to keep this simple. These 538 votes in the Electoral College aren't given to the citizens directly, but are instead divided among the states. So how does the Electoral College give out the votes? Each state, no matter how populous or not, gets 3 votes to start. The remaining votes are given out roughly in proportion to the population of the states. The more people the state has, the more votes it gets. Here's a map of the United States showing the voting power each state has by making one hexagon equal to one Electoral College vote for president. Because Electoral College votes mostly, though not completely, scale with population, it's also a map of where people live with a bonus given to the smaller states to make them a bit bigger than they would otherwise be. In early November, when citizens go to the polls, they aren't voting for president directly, but they're really telling their state how they want it to use its electoral votes. 48 of the 50 states give all their Electoral College votes to the candidate who wins a majority in their state. Take Florida, for example, which has 29 Electoral College votes. If a candidate wins a majority, no matter how small that majority, he gets all the votes. So the path to the White House is clear. Win enough majorities in enough states to get more than half of the Electoral College votes, and you get to sit at the big desk.
So let's just review the steps on how you become elected. Candidates have to be nominated through either primaries or caucuses. This is where party members vote for delegates who represent a candidate, and those candidates who receive enough delegates move on to the next levels. The next step occurs at the national conventions, where each party picks their top candidate. For the first time, parties race against each other in Step 3, the general election, where all eligible voters cast a ballot for electors who represent a candidate. It is in Step 4 that the president is determined by the Electoral College. Electors vote for candidates based on a proportion or winner-take-all of the popular vote. The candidate with the most support becomes the President of the United States.